Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, everyone. This is the Sound Off Option Show with Richard, Talk to Me Guy, and Sherry Edwards. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning, Richard. What a beautiful day here in Ohio, and what a lack of peace in the world. And I feel guilty sitting here being peaceful when there is so much that needs to be done to bring or to stop the bullies in the world in every way, whether they're soldiers or governments or the IRS or your local attorney or the person who squanders your water because they think you don't need any. So much going on that the world needs some white light, peace, love, understanding, but at the same time, no more. I think that fits into our guest today, which I think is going to be wonderful, because there's been a challenge about, no, you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't have red pieces of candy, only my blue bananas that are GMO'd. So I think our guest is going to help us all stand up for our rights just a little bit more. Should I announce?
I agree. I think it's such a positive thing about what our guest Anndrea Hermann is going to talk about hemp. It's such a positive thing, and I'll just say that it's such a positive thing that it's really great, and I'm excited to have her here. But go ahead, Sherry.
We are simultaneously broadcasting on Blog Talk Radio and also on our own sort of WebEx that we've set up for shows for people who would like to join us to watch the show. It's soundhealthoptions.com, and go to radio in the blue tab and then to Blog Talk Radio, and you'll be able to see a link there for the show and a bit about our guest. If you would like to just listen to the show, it's 347-850-1407. We are being sponsored today by the Institute of Bioacoustic Biology and Sound Health in Southern Ohio. We have a big project going on that we would like to share. We will probably be doing another Guardian or another class this coming Wednesday, if we can get some cooperation. We have created a computer program that will test you to see whether or not you have been exposed to these 9 strains of killer Ebola. We've got the computer program done, but we can't get past some glitches about putting it on everybody's computer because Chrome and Internet Explorer and Microsoft, everybody's stopping it and saying this is not legitimate, so we're trying to find workarounds. The staff has worked diligently to do that. For those of you in Guardian, our Guardian network, probably that Guardian class about liver, and for those of you that follow us, we'll put a posting up on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and every place else that we can find. This will be a free class, free software, and free textbook in the hopes of helping people take back their rights, their health rights. And I think what may be going to happen here is it comes to the United States and they say everybody has to have a shot because you've all been exposed, and I think the software will show you whether you've been exposed or not. We're going to ask the public to begin to help us gather data. But we have run into a glitch with something called PR Web, that's Public Relations Web, and they have been posting our press releases for years now. But we've run into a snag since we started this on the 11th, and it is now the 14th. So that's how many days we've been having a go-round with them. At first they said, well, too many words, cut it back to this, I understand that. Then they said, not enough references, so we put references in. Then they said, too many references, so we took some out. Now they're saying they have to have a reference for every sentence, and we're only allowed 6 references, so 6 sentences to put out a public relations. They said, this is too newsworthy, too breaking news, and we don't deal with breaking news. We only deal with public relations that deal with what your company's invented. You know, it's totally what it's invented. And I probably should share some of that with you. I will put it up so you guys can pull it down if you'd like. Maybe the 22nd copy. Maybe I'll put up the first copy because it has a lot of information that people need that's going to be joining us for this program. This is going to be very similar to what the program Richard and I did with a project, I should say, with radiation, that he was able to test it and get other people to test the software, and now we have it up on our website for free for everyone so they can help protect themselves. Well, that's my good and bad news for the day. Announcement 2 is that we have a new look on our website. We just ran out of space at the top, so we've put the buttons down the side, and the blue buttons are the classifications and then everything on it. You can see the pink Ebola project there. We will be posting things, posting the download for the software and everything else you need there as soon as we can get it working on your computers. Back to you, Richard.
Wow. It's, getting information out on the web these days is not as easy as we would, like to think. Everybody thinks, oh, you just post something out there, but it can be an uphill story.
Well, it's gotten to the point where it's funny now.
Yes.
We're just gathering all of this information, all the demands that they've made that are absolutely circular and illogical, and we're going to try to go to a national TV or radio show and tell them what kind of trouble we're having with this. Because Lynn Horowitz is having the same trouble, Rima Labo is having the same trouble. There's somebody squashing any kind of information that has the word Ebola in it.
And I think that's a perfect lead-in a certain way, because I think that this industry, what Anndrea is going to talk about, the hemp industry, is it has been and is beginning to chink away. I feel kind of like the hemp industry is, at least in the United States, is like the Titanic. It's moving slowly, but I have a feeling it's beginning to turn, and that's very exciting. And on that note, Anndrea Hermann is from Joplin, Missouri, but is now based in Manitoba, Canada. She earned her MSc in Hemp Cyber Agronomy at the University of Manitoba, a BGS in Hemp Economics at Missouri Southern State University, is a Canadian independent professional agrologist and an authorized Health Canada hemp sampler. Anndrea is the president of Hemp Industries Association, USA, special committee member of the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance, and is the owner of the Rich International Cannabis Consulting Hemp Technologies Canada. She is also an instructor at Oregon State University on industrial hemp. With over 15 years' experience in the Canadian international hemp cannabis industry, she has a wide range of interdisciplinary skills. Cannabis is part of her final vocabulary. Welcome, Anndrea.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, I do appreciate both of your time this morning.
It's so exciting. Do you feel that intro that I was talking about, what I was talking about was the Titanic, do you have that same sense that, at least in the United States, because I know Canada is ahead of the United States, at least in its ability to, actually grow hemp and do research on it nationally. Do you agree with that sort of Titanic, that the Titanic of what hemp is in the United States is beginning to turn around? Do you have a you have a glimmer of like, oh, look, it could be getting to happen here in the United States. Is that true, or am I just deluding myself?
Well, when I think of the Titanic, I often think, of course, of the ship going down. And in this case, I feel that the ship in the United States is really floating, and that we're gaining a lot of momentum and a lot of positive energy, whether that be from the national level, looking about what's going on in Congress and all the work that Vote Hemp is doing, and all of the constituents around the United States picking up the phone, writing the letters, calling their congresspeople, and then also what's happening grassroots, where people, the selfless movement of education is so empowering, and people really embracing this and stepping forward and coming to local festivals and setting up their own booths and all of these undiscovered gems of education that are happening. And you're starting to see, yes, absolutely, this united force growing in the United States, and the common voice is saying that the rights of American farmers have to be supported to cultivate industrial hemp, just like we can here where I'm presently located in Canada and Europe and many other places across the globe. So yes, absolutely, in that sense, the plans are being laid out, and it's being built, and it's being carried forward by many, many hands out there.
It's really exciting. I have to step back for a moment and clarify. What is the degree of economics? I think it's an interesting, as I break the word apart in my mind, I think it's fascinating, but I want to hear what that actually means.
Yes, economics was created in Missouri Southern State College, which now is Missouri Southern State University in Joplin, Missouri, my alma mater, was also the school where Dennis Weaver attended, but it was a junior college in Joplin, Missouri. And Dennis Weaver later in his life became an environmentalist and built an amazing off-the-grid partial home up in Montana, I do believe. And when I was in high school, I learned about Dennis Weaver. Of course, I had known him from watching Gunsmoke with my grandma, but then also learned about his change to looking at environment and how he's living his life. And so he keyed this term called ecolonomics, and it looks at how to create sustainability, we'll say, in looking at biologically, different sciences in biology, political science, economics, and sociology. So taking those 4 areas of study and saying, how can we focus on those 4 areas to create sustainability? This could be implementing a paper recycling program in your office. What happens first? Is it because people are concerned about nature and trees? Is it because there is now a political force? Is there an economical point to where you're going to get a fine, or you're going to get a bonus or a deduction from taxes for recycling? Is there a sociological thing that occurs where people just think this is the thing to do? And so I used that accreditation and built my bachelor's program on those 4 pillars focused on industrial hemp. And thankfully, I had an amazing professor, Dr. Jim Jackson of Missouri Southern State University, that really said, what are you passionate about? Get out there and do something about it. What do you feel, the world is being wronged about? And I said industrial hemp, and I was very blessed and very thankful to have the university not turn their back on me and say, this is interesting, Anndrea, go live the dream. And they helped facilitate that. So I created my own bachelor's focused on economics, focused on industrial hemp.
Wow, how cool. Very cool. That is really stunning. Yeah, that is really excellent. In your studies, this is a historical, foundation for me, is what do you feel happened in the United States with hemp? We went from, literally having presidents of the United States like Washington and Jefferson being hemp producers, being hemp advocates, producing hemp for all sorts of purposes. I don't know if it was used as much as a food as the idea of we have now works in more semi-arid zones. Is that correct?
It can, yes. That's very varietal specific. So one of the things that's really important, absolutely, can hemp survive in, let's say less than ideal conditions? Absolutely, it can. Would I advise on an agricultural scale that, that's the best way to farm industrial hemp? It does, it does like it's, 8 to 12 inches of moisture, which is what we're typically getting in the prairies without irrigation. So it can survive with very minimal and common rainfall amounts. And yes, if you ever were in a situation where you needed to grow the crop in a more arid or dry condition, it would grow, but of course you're not going to be having the bumper yields that you may have when you have, Mother Nature and rainfall and the proper type of fertility happening in the field. But when we start looking at economies of scale and we start looking at communities around the world that are dealing with less than ideal agricultural landscapes where they could plant industrial hemp, they could be harvesting this, and we're talking about purely on economy of scale, they could be harvesting this by hand, they could be feeding it to their people, to their animals, they could be working the fiber into an array of products. And so we start looking at that. Of course, this crop will grow pretty much anywhere, and it, doesn't take a miracle to cultivate a weed. And this is a song I have friends that sing about industrial hemp, saying that it will, and cannabis in general, you lay the seed down and you're going to get some growth. But it's really looking about what is that ideal growth that you're looking. Are you looking to have an agricultural crop where we're working on a farm with larger equipment that's going into the bin on a contract, or are we talking about a smaller economy of scale?
Yeah, it just, this is why I was so looking forward to you, talking with you, because it really, hemp, next we'll talk about the medicinal aspects, but there's so much benefit from what little I know about hemp. Everything that you're talking about, it's an amazing, if it was only grown for food, it would be amazing. If it was only grown for its fiber content and for, instance, back to a historical reference, I've always heard rumored, I think you're the perfect person to ask this of, that our Constitution in the United States was written either on hemp paper or there was hemp involved. Is that true? Is there something there, or is that just an allegory out there?
No, it really is true that, hemp parchment paper was used in the draft. And, hemp had a long steeping history throughout that time. And that was, that was really back-breaking work that was conducted by the slaves of America's history. And we have to remember, the hardships and how tough this fiber really is. And you see the machines now used to separate these fibers. And you think that, wow, a lot of these fibers used to be done by the breaking of men and women's backs across the globe. So we're looking at that historical context, which we have lost so much of. But absolutely, this is a crop that can be used in many different ways.
Wonderful. Now let's talk about, do you have more that you'd like to say about part of the sort of the nutritional aspect of, it's also a good, how is hemp to the soil? Is it a crop that highly leaches the soil and has to be rotated? Is it mean to the planet, or is it a good crop to grow in terms of that?
It is a very friendly crop to the planet itself. Now, depending on what us as humans put into that soil to make it perform really changes the impact that we have on our agricultural landscape. Right now, thankfully, in Canada for hemp grain production, so this would be hemp that's being grown to be produced into your hulled hemp, your hemp oil, your hemp protein powder that you're going to pick up on the shelves from any one of the Hemp History Week sponsors. This is a national education campaign happening across the United States. So all of those products that are grown and produced in Canada are grown without the use of in-crop pesticides because there are no current pesticides registered. So sometimes you have a law that will protect us from damaging the earth more. But definitely synthetic fertilizers are still used. There can be pre-burn-off on conventional food products using chemicals to get rid of the weeds prior to seeding. And so hemp itself, it has that long, nice taproot. It has the ability to go down and get water and nutrients from lower down within the soil. The leaves do fall back and add back some nutrients back to the soil if you are growing for fiber and you're allowing the fibers to red in the field. There is some nutrients going back into the soil from the redding process, in addition to the fact that we have a very thick canopy that will form and decrease the weed pressure in the field. So that's also beneficial on the farm landscape because you can use this as a natural rotation crop to suppress weeds. And it also works in great rotation after crops such as potatoes. It can work good in various grain rotations or after alfalfa. It does like nitrogen. And all crops like nitrogen. Of course, if you get excessive nitrogen, you start to decrease your yield. But it definitely does need the nitrogen, especially if you're wanting to get the yields up on a commercial farm to where it actually becomes lucrative to grow this crop once you look at the cost of farming overall. But most producers in Canada right now are making somewhere of the upper $200 and let's say $230, $250 profit per acre on cultivating industrial hemp, and this is greater than most of the other crops that we're growing, and that depends on whether or not you're certified organic or a conventional grower.
Wow. And could you say more about the thing you said about no pesticides are used in hemp because of regulations? Is that because a group, some group you started, let's say, made that happen, or is that just how the industry grew in Canada? Why are there no pesticides used?
That's how the industry really grew here. I mean, the industry was really developed and geared towards, catering towards the people that were looking for the food quality, but also the, reduced non-GMO and no pesticides. That really was how the market really developed. And people that were really concerned about where their food came from and how was the food grown. And here in Canada, we actually do have protocols that have to be gone through to show that, if we spray a product here, that it's not, when somebody eats it, they're not going to keel over. So there are tests, there are years worth of studies that have to go on to show the efficacy of actually using these products. We have had, and there are now currently, testing that is going on looking at using pesticides in industrial hemp here in Canada. It's nothing that the industry can stop, as saying that either the Canadian hemp industry in general. They cannot necessarily stop that because it's a company's, desire. If they want to do that, they can get permission to do the testing on the varieties, and some people do want that. And so what it will come down to in the long run is actually looking at the companies such as Nativa, that you had spoke about being in California, and Nativa is a definite industry leader, an industry, collaborator and colleague in really advancing the hemp industry. It would be up to the contracting companies that are bringing in the product to make sure in their contracts that they state that this crop, whether it be certified organic or conventional, would be grown without the use of in-crop pesticides, because we will have pesticides registered for in-crop production of industrial hemp. We will not be able to stop that, but it will be the voice of the people and the voice of the contractors that will basically lay the final law down when it comes to that. So it will be important as we move forward to have a united voice from the marketplace saying we want to continue to have hemp food, whether it be conventional or, of course, certified organic, grown without the use of in-crop pesticides.
And do you see, as things begin to happen in the United States with hemp, like in Kentucky and Colorado, do you see, I don't have a better word right now other than hope, that could happen here as well, that we might have hemp being grown here without the use of pesticides?
Absolutely. I mean, the same market drivers and the same companies that it will be a strong voice from myself personally that we definitely encourage or discourage the use of, encourage people not using, and companies and market really driving that. But once again, as the industry is as small as what it is, and when it comes to the power of chemical companies that have it, they will push forward with the love of the work they do, and we will continue for pushing forward with the love of the work that we do, and hopefully, states will stand up, and also producers will stand up saying, hey, look, this is a crop. We don't really need this if we put back agronomics in. So, basically, if we start looking at giving the crop what it needs, if it needs water, let's give it to it. If it needs, well, let's hope we can. But basically, when it comes to fertility, it's very important to make sure that producers are, having soil tests done. And also right now, what needs to happen in the United States is variety discovery. So we have been in Canada now since 1998. So my first and foremost advice is I would never tell a grower anywhere in the world cultivate industrial hemp if they were not sure what variety may work for them. So this is what we're seeing. We're seeing really smart moves by producers in the states that are currently cultivating, and they're putting in smaller amounts, they're trying some varieties, and seeing what varieties is really going to work here, because when it comes to the farmer is not going to want to plant something that he's not sure really is going to grow. So we want to make sure that those ag extension work is happening and saying, hey, let's do some variety trials. We can put these in so producers can come and see the different varieties, and we can get the varieties registered here, and then producers would then know that, hey, I'm going to plant this variety is actually going to grow, and I'm going to be able to harvest it for grain, I'm going to become a pedigree seed grower, or maybe I'm going to grow this variety for fiber only.
Wow. More wow. Now let's move into, because there are next two big categories are ready for more shows. There's been a lot of news and a lot of conversation out there about the use of medicinal cannabis. Particularly, there was a special done where a lot of the conversation was about what was happening in Colorado and using the particular strain of sativa in autism and the benefits of CBD oils. Can you talk about that a bit, about how, and that's why I really wanted to separate out the commercial industrial hemp in the sense of everything that we've talked about, now moving into the category of CBDs and THCs, benefits of fibromyalgia, inflammation. Can you talk about that and how that's also evolving at the same time?
Yes, I definitely think this is not my necessarily area of expertise. My work is essentially focused on industrial hemp, but having, living a natural cannabis cultural lifestyle and embracing these, because if you are a patient and seeking medical cannabis, you also need to be looking at, the protein levels and your essential fatty acid profiles, what else is going on in the body, but how we can feed that. So there's a lot of crossover that's happening. And then what we're seeing is, medically and scientifically, more and more research is able to break down the cannabis plant into its constituents, looking at THC, CBD, and all of the different types of cannabinoids and how those are reacting in our body. Because, cannabis exerts an effect in acting in two types of receptors in our bodies. We have the CBD1, we have the CBD2, and these receptors mainly found in the brain and in the spinal cord and in the nervous system. Those are the CBD1s, and then the CBD2s are found in our immune cells. And these are things that we all have in our body, and you actually need to have these CBDs coming in to bind with these receptors in our body, and this is where the science is coming into play, because now they're actually able to look at taking a constituent of the cannabis plant and now seeing exactly what's happening in the body and the reaction it's having in the body, and scientifically being able to say, yes, we can see this happening right here, and then looking at the case afterwards. And so many families across really the globe right now, we are part of a global cannabis revolution and movement. And you get that from shows like this, really showing, hey, look, it is happening around the globe. So when we start looking at medical cannabis every country differs in how the regulations are rolled out. If you look at what's happening here in Canada, we have the industrial hemp section is still controlled underneath the Office of Controlled Substances, which follows underneath really essentially the Narcotics Act here in Canada. So we are still controlled, the industrial hemp sector, by the same office that controls medical cannabis. We're all part of Health Canada, but industrial hemp is not part of Agriculture Canada per se. We're still part of the Controlled Substance Act. So with that, looking at how the Canadian sector is set up, where we have full legal access to medical cannabis, so you can go to your doctor anywhere in Canada and you can get your prescription, and then you can go to a company such as Can or many of the other medical cannabis facilities that are registered, and some that are upcoming, pending the regulations or pending approval and inspection. You can go and get your medical cannabis 100% legally, and it's essentially shipped to you in the mail. So these different types of access that we're seeing, whether we look at what's happening in Colorado or if we look at what's happening in many of the other states, in California and Washington State and Oregon, where they have an access program which decreases crime, and really what I say, increases transparency among the people that are consuming, because now people don't have to hide the fact that they're consuming either some type of cannabis, whether it be eating industrial hemp food. They don't have to hide behind that, or consuming medical cannabis. And of course, as you said, when we start looking at what medical cannabis can be used for, the medicinal effects, it has both palliative and psychoactive effects and inflammatory effects and neuroprotective effects. And this is all being backed by peer-reviewed research.
Well, I think there's been some research, I'm not sure if it's by the MAPS organization, which I always forget what that stands for, MAPS.org, has been doing some very interesting research with cannabis or CBDs possibly, and THC, I think is a mix, with post-traumatic stress disorder and veterans. So, I mean, there is a lot of really interesting research out there, and taking what I would call advantage of those natural receptor sites we have in our bodies. So there's a lot of, positive activity, happening. But I think that, at least from my view, being here in the United States, is that, as you say, in Canada, you can order it in the mail and it can just come to you because it's federally legal. It's okay. Now, we don't have that here in the United States, even though I see some companies who are like, oh, sure, buy it online. But if I'm in a state where it's not even kind of legal, am I in a tricky zone, I guess I'd call it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is whether or not, when you look at cultivation or the growth of cannabis in general, if you're in a state that does not have the regulatory affairs put in place yet to roll out the cultivation of industrial hemp or the research of industrial hemp, then you should not be putting the seed in the ground and cultivating it, because right now all states are moving forward to putting in that regulation. So it is important within the state law, and recognizing the fact that even though in one state the cultivation of cannabis, whether it be for industrial or for medicinal properties, is still a controlled substance. And so it is a very tricky area right now, where you've got one state that allows it, the neighboring state does not. You cross over that state border, and it might not matter whether or not you legally gained access to that material in one state or another. You're still falling underneath the state regulations. So definitely, all people to be, very conscious of where the legal framework is right now. And of course, now we're having precedents set, where we do have the Farm Bill in the United States, particularly for industrial hemp. So that really starts to open up the doors so state officials don't have to be scared. We also had an amazing rule letter that came down from the United States Department of Agriculture, stating that a farmer that was seeking access to programs provided by the United States Department of Agriculture, and some of these were protection loans and other services that are provided. They would not be denied access to these programs if they were in a state that cultivated industrial hemp underneath state law legally. So this is really great. We're starting to see forward movement within other departments. But definitely be mindful of what the state regulations are. And if you are seeking access, like we've seen in many other people, they decided to move themselves so their family could seek a treatment, family member, or in the case of industrial hemp, you will see businesses deciding, in cannabis in general, to go and set up business in another state where they can actually legally do it without having to have fear of, being legally punished.
Yes, I'll say being in California where, cannabis has been a industry crop for quite some time, not legally, but an industry crop for quite some time. And I know people that have their cards and feel all like, I'm, okay, I can do whatever I want, kind of. That I think it's still tricky because I know people that have been growing crops to sell to, clinics. And yet, if the feds decide to come in and, shut them down or take their crop, the feds can. I know people have had helicopters land on their property in California within the past year, and the feds have, in Santa Cruz, there was a ginormous bust in Santa Cruz, bust in air quotes, by the feds because they, for whatever reason, I don't know, cash flow is down, they needed the crop. I don't know, whatever the reason. But, I mean, it's still not okay to grow it in California, even though it's a huge industry. Unlike, again, in Colorado, there could be a monstrous tax revenue in California if they would, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in Canada, you can order it in the mail and get it and be okay.
Yes, it's very different than Canada, and, when we start looking at the difference of how, industry has to be set up when it looks at our colleagues in the medical cannabis sector and us looking in the industrial hemp sector, there are a lot of different things that are happening there, how the crop is cultivated, how it's harvested, what part of the plant you're desiring to grow is another major difference. When you look at the cultivation of industrial hemp, we are dependent upon the male plants to pollinate the female plant so that we get seed or grain so that we can cultivate the next year's crop. Most of our colleagues in the medical cannabis sector are growing from clones and not actually growing for seed. There are some that absolutely are, but in medical cannabis, you prevent the males from pollinating the females so that you get buds, and that's why you're typically not seeing any male plants in those types of grow operations. But we are seeing a level of integrity kick up, and I just wanted to let your readers know, one of the things I love is Google Scholar. It's really great, and there was just talking about the use of looking at post-traumatic stress. There was actually a review of a clinical review of the literature that was just published in 2012, in June of 2012, looking at that. So this just drives back the fact that, what is happening is actually being supported by science, whether or not we look at the consumption of industrial hemp foods or using it in composites or looking at medical properties coming off of cannabis.
Yes. I'm going to jump quickly to the hemp-technologies.com because I think this is another whole amazing sector of the hemp realm that people don't really think about or, necessarily know about. But hemp is an amazing positive addition to the building industry. Please talk to us about that. That blows my mind that there's so much of it happening out there.
Absolutely. So we're working, my role at Hemp Technologies Global, I am the president of the company with our vice president, Greg Saval, and we are part of the Creative Edge Nutrition family, and you can check that out. We trade under ticker FitX. And, really looking at the benefits of building with hempcrete is because it has a very high thermal insulation, and we're seeing savings of somewhere between 50 to 70% energy savings. And it's fire resistant, it has termite resistant, and it's the ability for the walls to actually breathe. And we don't really think about our walls breathing because in most homes we have, we want to make it as tight as possible, but these walls really need to breathe, and that allows for flow of air in there, and so it's a low air infiltration system. and really starts to regulate the temperatures within the building. It has a negative carbon footprint, and this has been done by looking at some of the research from our colleagues in the UK and mostly in Europe, where they have been using hemp as a building material. We're seeing major buildings being built with industrial hemp. And if anybody out there is interested in learning more about industrial hemp building, definitely check us out at hemp-technologies.com. In addition, it's worth picking up a documentary called Bringing It Home, the movie. They're actually at Farm 8 this week promoting industrial hemp, but it's a great documentary about hemp building in general, really looking at the science backing it. So, it has a high acoustic performance, and it's so simple to use. You basically take in the inner core, the woody portion of the hemp stalk called the hurd. You mix it with some lime, which is your binder. There's various different binder recipes out there that you can gain access to, and water. You put all of those ingredients together. You pour it into a flame, which is like a shutter that you're going to remove off the wall. You pour it into that shuttering system, and when I pour, it's really sort of being shoveled in and bucketed in. It's not like pouring liquid at all. The texture is really like the texture of a snowball when you want to put the material together. Put a light tamp in the wall, let it cure up. I've seen shutters moved within 30 minutes of the wall actually being tamped into place, which is a very light tamping, and I've seen little ones as young as 3 years old grab a tamper all the way up to all age groups can get in there and work with hempcrete. Definitely have to wear gloves and mask and those things to protect yourself, because the lime is, when it's in that raw form, is caustic to the skin. So you want to definitely make sure you're taking mine there. But once it's in the wall with the water, then it's continuously basically trying to become stone again.
I'm almost speechless, which is so unusual. That thing that you talked about where it's sound deadening, but it has a high dB, or however you would refer to that as. Talk a bit, because I'm thinking about doing some alterations to where I broadcast from. So anytime I hear something that assists in being sound deadening or acoustically beneficial, I'm always like, wow. So I could actually use hemp in some way to make a quieter sound room. Is that correct?
Absolutely, you can. And I've seen this application put in play in various industrial types of buildings where they've actually, one in particular is an innovation center. So, of course, they have a huge compressor going lots in their center, because lots of things need to be injection molded under compression. And so they've got this compressor so loud in there, and people have to wear earphones and plugs. And so they basically made a little encased wall to encase the compressor, and you can really hardly hear it. And so that's one thing, looking at hempcrete, but then also looking at other types of compressed boards and how hemp has the ability to really just sort of take up the sound, but without deadening it in. So it absorbs, but you can still hear and speak, and it's still very clear. So it has a really great property for ceiling tiles, also because of the lightweight properties of. And of course, this depends on, what the product is, but the lightweight properties and its acoustic properties. So now you see companies like Motor Coach looking at and running tests on using hemp as non-structural components of the buses. And this makes the bus lighter, and this makes the bus not so loud from the bus itself, which makes it a more pleasant ride on the inside. So absolutely, for sound studios, interior of homes, any place you want to be a little bit quieter and better sound properties. Wonderful.
And you're talking about hemp in terms of it being a breathable product in walls and things. So I'm kind of making this up from some of the things I know about hemp. Is hemp mold resistant? So that could be a reduced issue that happens in construction?
Absolutely. It has properties of prevents mold, really, because of the line characteristics. Now, this is not something that you're wanting to put below grade. So everything with hempcrete really is above grade. So you're not going to be using it in basement walls per se, but then you could use hemp insulation wood back. so a pink insulation replacement. But yes, it has, prevents mold. It's termite resistant also, which these are huge things, especially when we look at mold in particular, because of the pH of the wall, and it also has a rodent resistant to it. So there's other characteristics that go along with creating this healthy living environment.
Amazing, amazing! I need a sound effect for it. It sounds. I mean,
I know,
as we go through it, it sounds like it's a magical thing, and it just stuns me that it's not happening today. Here, now. It just blows my mind.
Yes, well, it is starting to happen. We're starting to see many universities. If you take a look at Oregon State University, introducing the first 4-credit university-level course, which I've been able to help facilitate, bringing together 26 different lecturers around the world to present this material to students or students that are in 4-credit or extended education students. You're starting to see many other universities around the United States and around the globe incorporating industrial hemp into their education. Whether you look at the University of Northern California and their fashion department, they really incorporated hemp textiles into teaching with their students in textiles. Whether you look at what's happening in North Dakota State University and Dr. Chad Alden's composites division, or Richard Pronis at the University of Connecticut looking at hemp as a biofuel. So you're now starting to see academia really say, this is interesting, and we can incorporate this, and we can bring these materials in. And now we have the opportunity for agricultural studies to start happening in the United States, and that is really exciting, as we do want to bring this crop home to American farmers. And definitely encourage everybody to reach out to votehemp.com. Check out the HIA.org. We've got our conference coming up in Washington, D.C. next week, we will also have a lobby day occurring where we will be up on Capitol Hill, and I will be there lobbying my representatives and senators in the state of Missouri. Senator Roy Blunt and McCaskill and Representative Long will be in their offices encouraging them to become co-sponsors to those federal bills that we have right now in the House and the Senate.
Wonderful. I can't be happier. It's just amazing. You have more information than I thought, and I already knew you had a lot. And it leaves me, befuddled, because it is just an amazing plant that's available to us now that we could be doing, that we are. I mean, in Canada, you're doing it more so. It's happening here, but I want it to be happening, like, now. I want to drive out to Sacramento and actually see hemp growing in fields, for God's sakes. I mean, it makes so much sense.
It will happen. I mean, it is happening. We have a lot of forward movement, and we're part of something so much greater than ourselves, and that's really what I feel when I think about all the work that's being done across the globe and across the United States by so many people that continue to have a selfless look at promoting industrial hemp and really wanting to help grow the industry and get access. They just want to see the hemp field. They just want to be able to buy it. They want to be able to know it's being grown locally or closer to home. And thankfully, we've had a very good working relationship between the Canadians and the United States and globally to help really drive that industry into something where, industrial hemp does become, a mainstay in our diets. And it'll be interesting to see where we've been in the last, where I've been in the last 20 years since I got out of high school, writing papers in high school about cannabis and industrial hemp, and where we're going to be in, 20 years from now when we look at the hemp industry. We definitely will not recognize it, and there's been a lot of people that have really supported me personally throughout my journey with industrial hemp. So big thanks to, Federal Farms and so many other people out there that really kept the faith in me all these years.
That's really great. I have an audience question that you may not know because it's not exactly your bailiwick, but you may have a feel for. Do you know how many people we have in jail, at least in the United States? I know there's a high population of people in jail for, marijuana possession or, anything along that lines? Do you have a sense of that or knowledge of that?
Well, I definitely know it's a lot. As I said, it's not really my area of expertise when it comes to that. But I know there are a lot of people that are in jail pertaining to, cannabis that are in very small amounts, or that they really were accessing this for medicine or were providing this product as medicine. So I'm not sure what the number is, but I know that it's incredibly sad to know that a lot of people are in prison. But what we're seeing now is with current state regulations changing, they're then needing to go back and look at the people that are in prison and really reevaluate why they are there, and are they there for a minor cannabis charge, which now they could go down and legally buy at a store. So we are starting to see, just from me seeing from the news, of course, I'm not actively engaged in this, but definitely would stand up for the rights of a person that was sitting in jail that should not be there from a minor cannabis charge.
Absolutely. Somebody in chat is sending me this. I love the chat. Thank you. Somebody is sending me this in chat saying that the number of Americans incarcerated in 2012 in federal, state, and local prisons and jails, 2,228,400, or 1 in every 108 adults, the highest incarceration rate in the world.
Absolutely, and that pertains to medical cannabis, and absolutely, your listeners out there on the medical cannabis, I would have so much more information than I would, as that's not my dominant, but definitely know. And, looking at industrial hemp, the nice thing is that with state legislation coming into place, we are not forming, farmers are not criminals, and neither are most of these people that have a minor charge for medical cannabis or access or many years ago that really should be reconsidered. There's lots of work with reintroduction programs that have to occur. So, and there definitely needs to be some, help. And then we can look at organizations such as the Fair Shake program, and these are programs for reintroduction programs for people coming out of prison. So there is a framework, and I definitely would like, and this is one thing that people can get excited about, and bringing it home, the movie, one of the things that they said was they were at a group home for girls, and the girls all put together these amazing presentations about industrial hemp, and they were really excited, and these are trouble dudes, and I have the chills right now remembering the story from Linda and how touched they were. So this is really something that, people can gain passion and they can be positive about, and this is something that is still a bit taboo, but can give the youth a little bit of passion also, and so this is, education is very key when it comes to all age groups.
Wonderful. I would, for everybody, I'll put this in our show notes, suggest that everybody go look at, the website is bringingthemoviehome.com, Bringing the Movie, there we go, Bringing It Home, the movie, I'm sorry, my dyslexia kicks in, Bringing It Home movie.com. That looks like a great documentary. I'm not familiar with it. We'll be checking that out. And I would also advocate for people, particularly here in the United States, go to votehemp.com and kick our government in the butt. That's what I would have to say about
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Take that action. They are listening, and they need to hear from the constituents. It's very important for you to have your voice heard, and I will be up on Capitol Hill next week, representing as many people as I possibly can and helping to speak with their congressional leaders so that your voice is heard.
Wonderful. And one more time, how do people follow what you're up to and what you're doing, and where's the best place for people to follow you on the web and just be, aware of what you're doing? Because you're
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of great sites that you can reach me through, hemp-technologies.com. I also host a weekly radio show as part of the Time for Hemp Family Network. It's called iHemp Radio, so you can check me out every week on iHemp Radio and look back at any of our archives. In addition, with great nonprofit organizations such as the Hemp Industry Association, the HIA.org, and hemptrade.ca, which is the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance. So I am based at hemptechnologies.com, but you can also check me out at iHemp Radio, where we're talking about hemp all over the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anndrea, for what you do. It's so important, and I'm so, thrilled to talk with you about all this, because it's an amazing plant that can do so much good, period. As you well know, I mean, you've been possessed, and I mean that in such a positive way, about hemp, as you say, since high school. So it's really, it's such a powerful thing. I'm so happy we got to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Richard, and to all your listeners.
You bet. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday. I'm not sure what Tuesday's theme is, but I know we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks again, Anndrea. Bye-bye.
Thank you.